Good afternoon, everybody, and thanks for joining me for another investigative session of OLC4O Term 2B. I chose that word, investigative, because we'll be exploring a bit of journalism in today's class, a further explanation of writing news reports, information reports, and things of that nature. It's thank you for joining me for an investigative session of OLC4O Term 2B, brought to you by WASA Distance Education Center. I am your instructor, Mike Laverty, and today's date is Thursday, May the 25th, 2023. And today's date marks class 23 of our time together here. So I think we're about, we're 2/3 of the way through the course. We're working our way through Unit 3. And we're going to be looking at assignments 35 and possibly assignment 36 today, but we're mostly going to be spending time on assignment 35. And if we have enough time, we'll go to assignment 36. But we got plenty of time to work through these assignments. And like I said, last class, assignment 35 is a big one. Lots of parts to it. It's worth 52 marks, so it's a substantial chunk of your grades for Unit 3. So, once again, just give you some important reminders about these important dates. This is Week 6 of Term 2B. We will have Week 7, 8, and 9 coming up in the 3 following weeks. And then that'll be it. That'll be it for Term 2B and this course. So with that in mind, if you are a potential grad, just note that the deadline for submitting work is June the 9th. So you've got to have all your coursework in by June the 9th, and then after that date we can book your final exam, but you have to have all your coursework in by that date so you can attend the graduation ceremony, which is coming up on June the 15th. Other students have a deadline of June the 16th for submitting work in this course. So if you're working and if you're enrolled as an independent learner in the IL stream, then Term 2B is your last chance to have this, to finish this course. So you have to have all your coursework into us by June 16th. If you can't make that deadline work, then you have to re-register for the summer and start your coursework all over again. So I just don't want students to be in that situation, which is why I'm going to offer those reminders. So yeah, we've covered Units 1, covered Units 2, and now we're finishing our discussion of Unit 3, which will take us into next week as well, Week 7. And then we'll cover Unit 4 and spend some time helping you get ready for the final exam. So this whole course, everything we talk about in my lectures gets you ready for that final exam. So, I know that you may listen to these classes or check them out on YouTube for help with a specific assignment, and that's awesome. I appreciate that. But I also try to give you lots of tips and feedback and insights to help you with that final exam, and to hopefully to give you some insights that you can carry on with the rest of your life. So appreciate you tuning in, taking the time to listen, and if you ever want to drop me a line, give me some feedback on what I'm talking about. If you have any ideas, anything you'd like to hear discussed on the radio, then by all means do that. OLC4O broadcasts live from Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday from 1 p.m. to 1:50 p.m. Central Standard Time. You could phone into the studio at 1-800-465-7144 or 1-807-737-4017, and you can phone in with any questions or comments. We are live on the air at 91.9 FM, and we are also at Bell ExpressVu channel 972. You can also join us on the Zoom application. So if you go to zoom.us or go to Zoom on like a smartphone, like using the app, click the join button, enter my meeting ID 417-6699-799. And of course, if you search for Laverty WASA on YouTube, you'll find my YouTube channel, and I have lots of videos. I did teach this course last term, so if you go to my playlist, you'll find the OLC4O playlist. You'll find Term 1B and Term 2B. And then I try to label there's also playlists that go by unit, right? So if you're on Unit 3, for example, and you need help with assignment 32, then you can just go to the Unit 3 playlist and just see the titles. And I put the I do put the assignment in the title of the video to make it easy for you to find what you're looking for. You can email me directly at mlaverty, MLAVERTY, at nnecschools.org. You can find me on Facebook Messenger. That's LAVERTY space WAHSA. So look for me on Facebook. You can add me as a friend or just simply communicate with me through Messenger. If you've got any questions at all, you can also phone us toll free at 1-800-667-3703 and talk to someone here in the building, especially if you have questions about graduation, about your path to getting a credit in this course, your path towards achieving your Ontario Secondary School diploma, becoming a high school graduate. Just reach out to us. We're here to help. And with that in mind, here's some suggested progress. If you've been taking this course for about 5.5 weeks, you should have Units 1 and Unit 2 pretty much wrapped up. And on to Unit 3, you should have read or skimmed the handout and should have read the first 6 chapters or so of Jimmy Comes Home, at the very least, right? We're jumping ahead up to Chapter 9 for later on in our assignments, so sorry if you haven't read up to there. There's going to be some spoilers, but we do need to proceed with the course as it is. So here's today's lesson. We'll look at today's headline, and then we'll do our words of the day, then today's headline, and then we'll talk about assignment 36, and if time permits, have a look at assignment 36. But I think we'll probably just have enough time to talk about assignment 35. Your learning goals are to review the reading strategies of skimming, scanning, and taking detailed notes to complete Part 2 of assignment 35. And review the writing process to compose an opinion paragraph and a news report. That's parts 3 and 4 of assignment 35. Your success criteria are to practice your reading skills to complete part 2 of assignment 35, and to practice the writing process to complete an opinion paragraph and a rough draft of your news report. So the news report in part 4 of assignment 35 asks for a rough copy and a final copy, right? So that's a foundational concept in this literacy course, just this idea of writing rough copies and then improving those rough copies through careful revisions and editing and just giving some careful thought to what you've written, and then producing a better version. And that's really the key of the writing process. That it's once you unlock that, then you really see the potential in it, and you don't have to get things right the first time, which I think is very liberating as a writer. Just knowing that I can just simply write and put ideas on the page, and it doesn't have to necessarily make sense. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to flow. All I have to do is write. All I have to do is just get things down on the page, and then later I can come back to it with a new mind, and I can find ways to improve it. We talked about the concept of punching things up, getting a baseline and then making it better. So that's what it's going to be all about today. So here's a couple of political cartoons about the news. The first one is, Today everyone protested everything everywhere, which certainly seems like that's the sign of our times, but for good reason. The world is very chaotic right now, a lot of instability around the globe, but I guess you could probably say that's the same no matter what period of time in history you go to. But yeah, people are constantly fighting for the world that they think should be, right? And they protest that, and they fight for what they think is right. The middle cartoon says, "Look out, Trump is a threat to journalism." And this is the old school journalist represented by like a Nemo-like fish, and he's being gobbled up by the monsters of Google and Facebook, right? So a lot of people get their news, through social media, and And we're getting our news and our information. It's interesting because now there's like artificial intelligence and there's software, and they're bringing the news to us, right? So so I would just say, like, as much as possible, you've got to be like an active participant, and you've got to seek out the things that you want to seek out, and not just blindly accept things as they come to you. And then that's the kind of scary thing with the news feed that's on your phone, right? It's just sort of giving you things that it thinks you want to read, right? And sometimes you need to be challenged, and sometimes you need to be exposed to ideas that you may not agree with, right? So, and it's good to see the two sides of an issue, or four or five sides of a very complicated issue. The final cartoon says, the editor says, "I'm looking for a reporter who is imaginative." I did just say investigative, didn't I? So that harkens back to my opening word of the day there, investigative, so which means to investigate, and imaginative, which means to make up facts. So just to emphasize the difference between a news report, and fiction, right? So just giving people the news, giving people the information. But of course, it's never just about receiving information. People always have a purpose in mind, right? So that's good to keep in mind, right? So anytime an article is published, the person who wrote it had a purpose in mind. Were they trying to just give information to people? Are they trying to persuade people to think a certain way? Is this entertainment? What is this thing that I'm reading? Why was it written? Who was it written for? Is someone trying to change the way I think, right? These are all very important questions to ask. Here's some Anishinaabe-Moan words. So we've got inutage. Inutage is a verb which is she or he quotes people, reports what people say. Again, I apologize if I'm not pronouncing that right. That's I-N-O-O-T-A-A-G-A. Inutage. To quote is an English verb which means to repeat or copy out words from a text or speech written or spoken by another person. So that's Latin from quote, which means how many, literally. So, a quota means, like how many of something you need. Baba Majimo is a verb which means she or he spreads the news about. I think we've used that one before. And Dadi Bajimo, which is she or he tells stories or reports on things that have happened. Journalism is the occupation of reporting, writing, editing, photographing, or broadcasting news, or of conducting any news organization as a business. From the Latin diurnalis, which means daily. So, nocturnal animals are awake during the night, and diurnals are like humans are typically awake during the day. A witness is an individual who, being present, personally sees or perceives a thing, a beholder, a spectator, or an eyewitness. From the Old English, witness, to see. Wit, mental capacity, and then ness, action or state of being, right? So a witness is someone who sees something in action and has the capacity to report on it. And your news reports often will have, witness, eyewitness people who are there. So just briefly, we'll talk about the article of the day. So this is from, last Christmas, or last winter, when the January 6th committee was calling for criminal charges against Donald Trump. And then we've got a shot here in the middle. We've got Chairman Benny Thompson speaks as the House Select Committee investigating the January 6, 2021 attack on the U.S. Capitol holds its final meeting in Capitol Hill in Washington on December the 19th. There's our headline. January 6th committee calls for criminal charges against Trump. So the January 6th committee is a proper noun. They are, a thing. So so those three words form a noun. What they're doing is they're calling for criminal charges. So they're not just charges, they're criminal charges. So criminal is an adjective that modifies the noun charges. And then these charges are against Trump. So two prepositions in this one, for and against. Have a little breakdown of the article, see what we can take away from it. A congressional committee is recommending the Justice Department pursue 4 criminal charges against Donald Trump over his bid to overturn the 2020 election result, right? So this is the main idea. This is the lead, right? That's what the article is about. So your news report should open with that main idea or that lead. Pushing prosecutors to take legal action against the former U.S. president as he seeks to reclaim the White House. right? So you open up with that lead. You introduce the main idea, and then in this case, it's a longer sentence, but the first part of the sentence introduces the main idea that they've recommended these 4 charges. And then after those charges were recommended, it led to the second action, which was pushing prosecutors to take legal action. The story continues. This unprecedented move Monday capped a dramatic, nearly 2-year legislative investigation into the January 6, 2021 riot at the Capitol. So that's, we have several adjectives modifying one noun. So we've got dramatic, nearly 2-year, and legislative. So there's many adjectives modifying one noun. So that investigation is dramatic, and it's nearly 2 years, and it's a legislative investigation. Then we get a quote from someone involved in the story. And so I want you to note the conventions there. So the double quotation marks open the quote. Faith in our system is the foundation of American democracy. If that faith is broken, so is our democracy. Donald Trump broke that faith. Then we get a comma. Then the closing quotation mark. And then we get the speaker tag, right? This one's a longer one. So this speaker tag reads, Committee Chair Benny Thompson told the meeting ahead of a unanimous vote to make the criminal referrals. So after someone says something, you get a speaker tag. And that speaker tag in this case tells us who said it. It tells us when he said it. And it gives us some even more context, right? So you can use that approach in your article, right? Officer Toms was on the scene at the accident when Gary fell through the ice, right? He told reporters, outside the hospital or something like that. So it tells us who said it. It can tell us where they said it, why they said it, when they said it. All right, so on to assignment 35, exercise 2. So what you're going to do here is you're going to skim and or scan the news report. Anisha Nabek received complaints over HST to answer the following questions. What is the main idea of this news report? Phrase it in one sentence if possible. And then go through the story to determine the sequence of events. That is, the order in which the events leading up to the news story actually happened. You may be surprised to see that they are not reported in chronological order, right? So if we look at the if we look at the article itself here, we can see that right. So read the questions first. This is a good strategy to keep in mind as well, right? When you're looking through any of these assignments, right? You review the questions, and then you go into it with those questions in mind, right? So we're looking for the main idea of the news report, and we're trying to find the sequence of events. Now, again, so the opening paragraph of a news report is, we call that the lead paragraph, and you need to have a strong lead when you write your news report. The Anisha Nabek Nation is calling for retailers to honor point-of-sale tax exemptions after community members reported being gouged by companies. And then you get a long quote here. Even after the province has sent out notices informing businesses that they must honor the rights of our citizens on and off reserve to tax exemption, we are hearing stories of companies trying to gouge First Nations customers, said Grand Council Chief Patrick Matahabi. These retailers are now breaking their own government's laws as well as ignoring First Nations rights. So it's good to keep in mind. So this is from an article published in Wawate News about 12 years ago, by Rick Garrick in Wawate News. So he's a reporter, and what he's doing is he's reporting on the facts. But what he can do is he can quote people in the article, and those people can give their opinion, right? So this man right here, the Grand Council Chief, Patrick Matahabe, right? He's giving his opinion. So we scan the opening lead. I mean, I'm reading it out loud to you, but we're just trying to move through it. So So we've got Ontario's 8% PST and the federal 5% GST were harmonized into the 13% HST. So this is back when HST was sort of harmonized and the two were brought together. And then we're just seeing how the government sort of like addressed that and how they worked out these tax exemptions. And then there's the process for how people can work through these tax exemptions. And Matahabe is reported as saying, "We showed Ontario that we are prepared to take it to the streets to fight for our rights. We are also prepared to fight for our rights in stores and malls if necessary. First Nation citizens can apply for refunds of the taxes they paid throughout July and August by filling out refund applications, which were to be made available after August 1st at Bound Council offices. Online at the Ministry of Revenue website." Yeah, so you get a general sense of what the article is about. So just you skim it, you scan it. I would just read. If you read the first sentence of each paragraph, that's going to give you a pretty good idea, and then just write down what you think the main idea is. Then the more complicated process is going through the story to determine the sequence of events, right? So that is the order in which the events happened, right? So to do that, you've got to use the scanning technique. So instead of just skimming, like skimming the opening paragraphs or the opening sentences, what I would do is I would scan this article and look for dates, right? Like July 1st, September 1st, July, August. You got lots of dates in here, right? So, and then I would just jot that down on a piece of paper, and then you've got, the last one talks about refund applications being submitted between September 1st and November 1st, 2010, right? So I would look to that, and yeah, I would skim and scan for dates, and then you have to go through the story to determine the sequence of events, right? So it's worth 4 marks. So if you can just in point form, you can write in full sentences, but I would accept point form on this one. Just give the order that things actually happen. So there's the order that there's the order they appear in the story, and there's the order in which they actually happened, right? So the two different things. So you're writing the sequence of events as they actually happened, not as they're reported, not how they're organized in the article itself. All right, exercise 3. This is worth 10 marks. So what you're doing here is you are, you are writing an opinion paragraph based on the information provided in the news report. Notice as you read the news report, again to get ideas, that the news report itself is free of opinion. It is only the quotations from the people involved that contain opinions. Use the organizational chart, checklist, and rubric to guide your writing. So that's that organizational chart and the rubric. You'll find it in the Unit 3 handouts. You can consult that just to make sure that you've included, all of the necessary elements. And then I will guide you through that as well. I will guide you through, some steps to getting that in place. Okay, so we're going to look at some steps we can take to express our opinion on this article, right? So you're going to go back, and you might I might want to use the example that they give here is that people are expressing like the Grand Chief Counsel Matahabe, he is expressing his opinion. So you might want to use it. You might want to use his opinion as an example. Okay. You might want to. You might want to look at his opinion and just say, like, do I agree with his opinion, or do I not agree with his opinion? And that could be a good way to organize your thoughts and just to give yourself a focus, right? And then another way to do that would just be to say, like, do I agree with what the government did? Do I not agree with what they did? Which side are you on? And that's what you have to do when you write an opinion article, right? An opinion article has to take a stance in some way. It's got to say, like, this is what I believe, and it should be easy to think of a counter argument, right? So okay, so it should be easy to think of a this is my opinion, and then someone should be able to easily think of like a counter opinion, right? So you can think of like really controversial subjects, the things that people fight about online all the time, right? So just think about stuff like that, things that sort of get people going. If you've ever seen people argue about stuff on Facebook, like Donald Trump, for example, the COVID-19 pandemic, which is, of course, not as controversial as it was, but, it's certainly caused, to get vaccinated, to not get vaccinated, right? There's just lots of things that people can argue about, different approaches to how to parent kids. Just think about things that cause people to fight and to argue and to when people have a personal stake in something, right? That's when it really gets them going, right? So let's have a look here and see what we can figure out for this assignment. So as I mentioned here, we can go back to the article itself, and we can say, okay, so you could pose as a question too, right? So do you think companies and stores were, quote, right? That's what he said. Matahabi said, gouging First Nations customers. Trying to think of some other questions. Did the government act irresponsibly when rolling out HST in 2010? Another question, we could say, were First Nation customers treated unfairly? So that's one strategy you might want to take. You could you could think of your own question if you want, but sometimes if you pose a question and then the answer to that question is going to tell you where you lie upon an issue, right? So just to go back and just to think about some of the things that we had just talked about. It's like, do you think that people should be do you think that people should be forced to get vaccines? Do you think it's right to fire people if they don't get vaccinated, right? Or do you do you think that companies like Facebook and Google should be should be regulated by the government, right? Should they have laws that sort of force them to, to do the right thing, or should they be allowed to just to do their own thing, right? We had just talked about online gambling, right? That's a good example, right? Do you think that online gambling ads should be allowed on TV? Do you think that they should be banned, right? Yeah, so it's that kind of thing. So in this case, do you think companies and stores were gouging First Nations customers? If you think the answer was yes, then you can use that restating solution, right? You can do the restating solution, like I believe, and you don't necessarily have to say yes, I believe this. You can just simply say, like, I believe that I believe that companies were, or you could say, I agree. I agree with Chief Counsel Matahabi that many companies were gouging First Nations customers, and then offer your opinion. So give a reason why you think that was true, or just continue to talk about the effects that can have when businesses are more concerned with profits and yeah, and that kind of thing. Or you could say, like, I believe the government acted irresponsibly when rolling out HST in 2010. They did this, but they should have done that, right? And then you just got to give some examples, and you can quote directly from the article itself, right? And then that third one, I don't think that First Nation customers were treated unfairly, right? So, I personally, it sounds like they were treated unfairly, but you could play devil's advocate and sort of pitch an argument against it, right? And just say, like, were they treated unfairly? And you could say they weren't treated unfairly because of this and that and that. Yeah, but you have to have, some kind of a reason, right, to explain why you think it. So you're giving your opinion. It only has to be a paragraph, right? So it's not like you have to write a fully fledged essay on this. You just simply have to make a statement, and then you have to you got to back it up with at least a couple of things that that explain why you are right. So if you follow this quick model, whoops, let's go back. Yeah, let's just see. I'll just erase that. But take that approach if you want. Just answer those questions. And then just simply say, state your opinion. Give one or two reasons or details to back it up. And then offer a conclusion or a closing thought. If you can do those three things, you'll have yourself a pretty good paragraph, okay? That's pretty much all you have to do there. All right, you are to submit, okay, so exercise 4, 30 marks. You are to submit both a rough copy and a final copy of this assignment. So keep that in mind. So you've got to have the rough copy done. And what you're doing here is you're using all the information and examples you have read in this course so far to write another news report using the writing process. You are to write a news report about what happened to Gary in Chapter 9 of the novel. There may be some details you have to make up, but be sure that the story flows and makes sense. Use the rubric to help guide your writing, okay? So what we'll do here is maybe we'll just we'll read a bit of that chapter together. We'll just review what happens in chapter 9, right? So chapter 9 is called Through the Ice. Okay, I'll read a bit of it. Jimmy poured a full tank of gas into his snowmobile and headed north along the west side of the lake to where he figured Gary would be coming out of the bush. Gary had told him that he would come out at the creek at the top end of Green Star Lake. Jimmy picked up speed. He felt better now that he was going somewhere. His restlessness started to fade. He felt as if he was doing something, even though he had no idea yet what that was. But what if he ran into the cops? They'd probably think he was in it with Gary, or at least helping him. He wished he had some liquor to make himself stop worrying. He was almost at the top of the lake when he saw the first lights coming toward him, pointed at the center of the lake. There were 3 machines out there. He could see that the snowmobile being chased was traveling at a terrific speed, but the 2 trailing lights were slowly gaining. That had to be Gary and Funt trying to escape from the police. Where was Wayne? All right, so as you read, what I would suggest you to do is your first step is you're reading through chapter 9, and you're just getting a sense of what happened in the story. Basically Gary is chased by these 2 RCMP officers, and he's got his illicit cargo, he's got his drugs that he's smuggling. Gary is being pursued. Oh, excuse me. Sorry, I couldn't mute myself in time. And Jimmy is very concerned about him, and then he sees what happened, right? So he knows that Gary is putting himself into a very dangerous situation. He's getting himself out onto some thin ice. He pulls up to the 2 other snowmobiles. What are you doing out here? Yelled Fred, the band constable, as Jimmy got off his snowmobile. What do you care? He yelled back. Is that Gary in the water? We think so. It looks like him from here, but you're not going after him on that ice. There's no way you'd get to where he is, right? This is after Jimmy has seen Gary's snow machine sink. Okay, so the RCMP officer and the band constable are reluctant. They don't want to go out there and rescue him because they think they'll put their own lives in danger. But Jimmy very courageously he gets out there, and he does get a hold of Gary. He tries to yank up Gary's. He does get him out of the water, right? And then after that, the band constable and the RCMP officer assist. They get him out of the water. They light a fire. Then they sort of get him back. They get him back to the community, and then he's flown out to the hospital. So you have all these details that you have to kind of to reconstruct. You've got Teresa's cousin Debbie in the story, right? So you've got a lot of characters that you can rely upon. You've got a lot of eyewitnesses, right? So what you got to think about here is, you've got to think about your inverted paragraph, or your inverted pyramid, right? So you got your lead paragraph. And you got your characters, your people. This is your who, right? So you've got to think of the who, what, where, why, and how. So basically, your lead paragraph is going to talk about, it's going to have to talk about Gary's accident, right? So Gary's accident, how it happened, you know, what happened next, and then maybe some other details. Maybe some speculation on his health. On Gary and his future, okay? So you're going to need to write a strong lead paragraph, a strong lead that tells us what happened, and then you can talk about how it happened. You could also talk about, you know, where and when it happened. And then, yeah, I mean, I think that's probably one of the best ways to guide yourself, right? You know, what happened. It's probably the number one thing, you know, what happened and to who. Then you got to answer, you know, where and when. And then you can talk about how it happened. And then maybe talk about what will happen next. And you can go back and you can use that template that we talked about earlier in the, you know, when we talked about the previous article, when we talked about when you were writing the news report about, you know, when Jimmy first comes home. So just writing a report about that. So what you can do here is do something similar and just follow that template. And you want to use a bunch of short paragraphs for this assignment. You know, I think that's probably one of the best you know, one of the best recommendations I can give to you is to sort of chunk up your writing into these shorter paragraphs. That will help organize your writing. And so you may want to do something like this, like a paragraph planner. You know, paragraph 1 is going to be my lead. You know, it's going to be, you know, 1 to 2 sentences. Sorry, this is sentence 1. You know, my lead, or yeah, paragraph 1. That's right, paragraph 1. So my lead is, you know, 1 to 2 sentences. You know, this is the main idea. And then paragraph 2 could talk about, you know, where and when this happened. Paragraph 3 could be a quote from a witness, someone like Jimmy or the band constable. Paragraph 4 could be, you know, more details on how it happened. Paragraph 6, this could be another quote. And then, you know, Gary's condition, you know, now and in the future. Now and in the future, okay? So, and that's, you know, and that's sort of, you know, just to give yourself a template or a model that you're going to go back and you're going to follow, and that should guide your you know, how you approach this article, right? It's going to approach how you look at it. And I think that, you know, if you've got that done, it'll be pretty easy to write this article. If you give yourself an outline and you tell yourself, you know, how you're going to write it, and then you just simply have to follow that guideline, right? And then remember, it moves from the most important information to the least important information, right? So, and it's not that the other stuff is not important. It's just that it's the things that the reader needs to hear. That stuff comes first, right? So see if I have just one last closing point here. You know, this is things the reader must know, and this is, you know, nice to know. And that's kind of a good way of looking at it too, right? So there's the information, you know, maybe just these last two paragraphs, right? So my first four paragraphs are the essential information. It's the things that you must know to understand this article, to understand what happened out there on the lake. And then the other two paragraphs are they're nice to know. It's helpful for understanding the story, but you know, the story wouldn't make a lot of sense if you only had those last two paragraphs. You know, if you didn't have the most important stuff, like at the start of the paragraph, if you didn't have that, and you know, that's a good way to approach your writing. That's and it's a good way to approach a lot of writing assignments. In fact, right? There's and we do call that point first writing, right? Where you make your main points first, and then you talk about the least important stuff second, right? So you just think that your reader is a busy person, they don't have a lot of time, so you've got to give them all that juicy stuff, give them all the important information right off the bat, and then if they want, they can continue reading beyond that. But if they're not interested in reading beyond that, then they don't have to, right? They don't have to to read beyond that, because you've given them the most important information, and they can put the story together. So yeah, so that's the approach that I would take there with this kind of an article. You know, I would take that approach and go back to the previous news report that we talked about in this class and look at that template, or you can just Google news reports and just find examples that way, and just see, you know, how a news report is structured. You know, that's one thing that you can do. And there's nothing wrong, you know, with doing something like that. Let's just see here. I'll just really quick before we close for today. You know, if you go to like something like the Thunder Bay Chronicle Journal, and then there we go. So we've got trucker caught littering through window, claim police, right? So you got to follow that kind of guideline. You're going to have a nice punchy headline. And this is a very short article, but it does get right to the point. See if we can find a bit of a longer one. These are very, very short articles. There we go. So new lift opens at Mount Baldy Ski Hill, right? So when the tired Mount Baldy ski lift broke down a few years ago, the Cardis brothers agreed that it would be the last time and decided to build an entirely new lift, right? After 3 years in the making and the stamp of approval of the Ontario Technical Standards and Safety Authority, the lift opened to ski and boarding enthusiasts this weekend, right? So the main idea is that this lift broke down and then people wanted to build a new one. And then as the article goes down, we get some nice information. We get some quotes from people. But, the most important thing is to put the main stuff first and to organize your article from most important to least important. All right, that's all the time we have for today. We will see you next week for week 7.